Hello, I am Jerry Page. I am with Roger Knapp. We are at Field Point St. Joseph on July 21st of 2025. Thank you, Roger, for letting me interview you. I know we agreed that we'll talk a little about your high school and then go ahead and to what you've done after high school, but I'll let you take it over with what you're comfortable with talking about.
Okay. I will have to insist that you lead me.
All right. So let's think about your high school. Where did you go to high school? When did you graduate? And then a little bit about what you did after.
Yeah. Well, I went to Christian Brothers Catholic Men's High School. Graduated from there. I'm at loss now.
Okay, that's great. When did you graduate? What year?
1949.
1949. Okay. What did you do right after high school, or?
Well, after high school, I finished in like June or so of 49, and then in September, give or take, I went to the junior college in St. Joe.
And when did you go to junior college? When did you go to junior college in St. Joe? What year?
Oh,
was that?
Well, it'd be 49.
Oh, it'd be still 49? Okay, so you went straight from high school into junior college with then no waiting.
Well, just for the 3-month, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What did you go for the college for? What were you studying?
Well, in those days, there was some choice, but there wasn't. I just took the courses that were available there. Nothing specific.
Do you remember what those courses were about?
Well, it was a general education course is what it was. And I was there for that year. And the next year, I was there for the second year. And the classes started in September, and they would wind up in, I don't know, May or June. But in this case, the Korean War had started, and I was a member of the Air National Guard. And they activated us into the Air Force. And then they couldn't let us stay in the college for the last. They took us on April, I think it was April 1, I think, and at that time they pulled us out of junior college before we finished the term, and then they took us out. I don't know, I've kind of lost myself. We then were in the Air Force. However, now her name is sketchy, but she was the teacher in charge of junior college. I'll think of her name in a minute. Nilly Bloom. And Nilly, she was an older woman. She saw to it that, and I don't know how it was done, but she saw to it that there were a number of us that were pulled out before the last 2 months of the classes, and then they gave us credit. so that I got credit for the last 2 months. And then I was in the Air Force from April 1 until 53, when the Air Force released us. And then, because of what I just told you, I had credit for 2 years. So I went down to St. Benedict's College. In those days, it was St. Benedict's, men only. That's changed nowadays. But at any rate, why, I went down there in the fall when it opened up, and I went the last 2 years of my college was in that college, and I got out the following June when the session was over, and that gave me 4 years of undergraduate work.
So while your time with St. Benedictine, do you have anything you want to share about that time at St. Benedictine College? Or what made you decide to go to that college?
Well, yeah, there's one thing I didn't mention. When I went down to St. Benedict's, they helped me arrange for the payment of the fees. And so my college was, for the last 2 years, was basically free. I majored in business, sociology, and my major was in, it's been a long time, and coming up with the right number or a correct number of words is not that easy. What was I just saying?
You were mentioning that your major was in business sociology.
And political science.
Okay.
See, it comes after a while. Okay. And that was pretty much it.
Okay. And then after you graduated, what did you do after you graduated from St. Benedictine College?
Well, I went to work for a firm, and here the terminology is slipped away, for what it was. In those days, they had a company, and I can't remember the exact name of it, but they had a company that did adjustments on insurance claims. So if you had a insurance policy and the company that had your policy, they would have you do the dollar adjustment, and if you had a fire in your house, why, if it was a big thing, then they probably would have had somebody else do it. But for most of the adjustments, they had this adjustment company, and we would go out and examine the situation and then try to come up with a accurate, intelligent amount of money to take care of the damage. And I did that for a while, but then, oh gosh, it's been so many years. Okay, what was I just talking about?
Insurance adjustment and coming up with prices to cover the damage. And then you were mentioning that you were doing that.
Yeah. And then they wanted to transfer me to Chillicothe. And I was a new father, and I was very concerned about my relationship with my children. My father was not that way, and I was trying to make up for that. And they wanted to move me to Chillicothe, and I smile when I say it now, but I turned it down because I didn't want to leave St. Joe. And then I went to, well, the sequence now is hard for me to accurately portray. I got another job, and I don't remember whether it was with Swift and Company, meat packing. It was a big outfit in St. Joe at that time. I don't remember whether that was first or whether, at any rate, I worked for a while, and then I switched jobs, and so.
Very nice. So, have you spent your entire life in St. Joseph? Did you spend your entire life in St. Joseph?
Yeah, I laugh when I say this. My great-grandpa was a German draft dodger, and he came to the States on sailboat, and he stopped for a while up north, one of the North States, just for a while, and then he came down to St. Joe, and St. Joe was the wagon center for the wagon groups, and I joined the wagon train, and in those days there was nothing of consequence past the Missouri River, and but I went with the wagon train, went all the way over the mountains, and past the Indians. At any rate, I got in California. Now, do you want me to keep going? Okay, all right. Well, when I was in California, it was the gold rush. And in fact, that's the reason I went, was gold rush. And hello. And we went over the mountains. And he got involved in some gold mining, and he was somewhat successful. Incidentally, I have all this in a book, that his children set up so that it wouldn't be forgotten or screwed around, and so forth. And I don't know, where was I?
The mining company.
Oh, yeah, the mining. Okay. He made some money mining gold, but then somebody got next to him and stole some of it. But he still had some left. And at that time, he decided to go back to Germany. And he was single, and he didn't want to go back on a covered wagon. So he had got on a sailboat in California, and he rode the sailboat all the way down around South America. Oh, yeah. And this is all written down. And he came up the other side, of course, and he went back to Germany, and he went back to Germany, and then there was a little blonde girl when he left, and he was gone 4 years. And she grew up while he was gone, and so they married and started a family. And Europe was awful. And he decided that, or they decided that they'd come back to the United States. And so they did. Again on a sailboat. And it was the middle of the summer, and they got becalmed, no wind, and sailboats require and so they came back to the States, and they brought the children, or I say children, I think there were 2 of them if my memory serves me correctly. My grandpa was the oldest, and so he was one that was, he came over when he was, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something like that. And then they came, they had been in St. Joe before, and they came back to St. Joe. And he evidently, or he or she, I'm not sure where the money came from, but they decided they were farmers, and so they decided they would buy a farm. And they did. And that, it was, in those days, there was a ford in the 102 River. You know where the Colony House is? Well, the Colony House was where the river was at that time. And they, I'm trying to put it into sequence so it makes decent sense. They originally were on the other side of the 102 River, And the 102 River and the Platte River joined together down south. And I'm not sure whether they started out in the 102 or started out in the Platte, but the point was that they before that happened, I forgot. Now I have to be careful or I'll mix up my great-grandpa and my grandpa. So he was single when he came back. No, wait a minute, he wasn't single. The sequence, I'm not going to try to get the sequence all lined up perfectly, but he met, no, wait a minute, that was the great, I'm mixing up my grandpa and my great-grandpa, because they both started out in Germany. And they both came across twice. See? Yeah, that's what we were wondering. He met my grandpa, let's see, my great-grandpa. I'm not going to try to get the years or the separated from the two, but the great-grandpa the 102 River, where Colony House is, if you were to tear down Colony House, you would find the foundation of a water mill. In those days, there was no electricity, and the only power they had was by building a dam where Colony House is. And they built a dam, and then they would come in from all over, because you see the city limits was on 8th and Felix. And so they would, from all over, they had people coming in with their corn and their other crops to do the milling. And the great-grandpa, his brother, he had, the grandpa eventually I know what happened, but trying to keep it in order of sane order is harder. But anyway, he got notice that his brother, who was a German, was in St. Joe, probably around where Hirsch Brothers. You don't know Hirsch Brothers, that's before your time, but that was 8th and Felix. And so he came across the dam from where he was living out on the other side of the 102 River, and he came across to go to see his brother, and the boys at the mill said that there was a big storm coming up, and they warned him. And supposedly he was an excellent swimmer, and he had a horse and buggy, and he crossed, went down to St. Joe, met his brother. Don't know anything about that other than he did that. And he went down, met him, and turned around and came back by himself with the horse. And there had been a terrible flood because of all this. And they found his body and the horse and the wagon several days later in the riverbed. I would like to keep this in better chronological order because it all did happen, but right now I'm struggling to keep the two separated chronologically and so then my grandpa bought a farm, and I said originally that there was a path that the settlers came across the river, and they came across the river, and there was a trail that eventually turned into Frederick Avenue. And they bought a farm on this trail, and I'm having a hard time now trying to keep the two of them straight chronologically.
What can you remember about your children go to school, and then we'll compare that to what might have been different when you went to school?
Well, we're Roman Catholics, and when I was in the 4th grade, I had been going to the Edison School, public school. It was a new school at that time, and I went then. The remaining of the 8 years, I was at Edison in 3, and in the 8 years, I was going to the Catholic school and the high school, and then I went to the public college, junior college, for 2 years, and then to. I don't know that there's anything spectacular or, I was never a top student. The last award I got, Scholastic Award, was from Sister Leon in the 5th grade. I've never been a top student, but I've also persevered and stayed with it until I got my degree. And of course I could tell you stories about that, but that's irrelevant, really.
Well, if you want to, you're more than welcome to. I will be happy to hear about them.
Well, I'll tell you one story that I laugh about when I think about it. There was the Christian Brothers ran the high school, and they ran a strict ship, and you did what you were supposed to do and so forth. And when we graduated, we had a home room, and we were assigned to, and one teacher that we were assigned to, and he decided to go around the room and ask what each of us was going to do now that we were graduating, and where are we going, and so forth. And he went around the room, and some of them went to college, some of them were going to Swift and Company or wherever, and so forth. And he came to me, and in those days the brothers sat on behind a desk on a platform about that high, and they were the boss. And he came to me, he says, "Okay, Knapp, what are you?" His name was Roger, his last name, well, his name to us was Brother Roger. And so he came to me, and I said, "Well, I'm going to college." And he started laughing, and he laughed, and he thought that was the funniest thing he ever had heard. Knapp is going to college, because I was not a top student. I just crept along, And so, anyway, I was mad. Oh, I was mad. He insulted me, and I was furious. And I made up my mind right then and there that the day I got my degree, and in those days you didn't have long distance like you do now, and telegrams were the way to communicate an important message, And so when I got through and got that degree, I swore up and down I was going to send him a hot telegram. Well, I had got a little older, a little smarter. I never did do it, But as I laugh as I think back,
What did you do after you graduate?
Well, I think I mentioned earlier that I took a job as an insurance adjuster. And then I switched jobs several times trying to get myself where I thought I should be or what I should be doing. I'm not going to try to go through that. It was just, but...
So, after you graduated, you was an insurance adjuster, and then you went through several other jobs. Is there any particular job that stands out that you want to talk about, or do you want to kind of go beyond that and think of one of your most recent memories just shortly after that you want to talk about?
I don't have anything more. I never was a spectacular person as a student, or as I was an only child, which is I swore up and down that I would never have an only child, because I think they're deprived of an awful lot. But I don't know that there's anything else that, if you want to ask questions, I'll answer as best I can. But
No, that's fair. You mentioned you had children. Did you have a wife as well?
oh yeah, we were married for 70 some years. I think it was 77 years. I think. Yeah. We raised 5 of the 6. The 5th one was killed in an accident, and but yeah, and they all have, again, I can't stand here and or sit here and say my kids were tremendous, fantastic students and all that. And I'm not going to do that. They were all respectable people. They didn't always do things the way I thought would be best, but that's nothing new, you know. And so.
You mentioned you were married for 70 years. When did you get married? And then did you have a pretty big wedding, or was it a small wedding? What was the wedding like?
Well, the wedding was not small and it wasn't big. She came from a family of 5. He was a switch tender in the railroad. He made decent enough money to take care of him in a minimal way. And me, my wife, as I told, or my husband, I'll get it right. My story to you was that I had I don't know. What were you going to say, Roger? Something spectacular? No. My wife and I both agreed we wanted a large family, and that's what we did. And we had hard times because we didn't have any money, and our parents, neither of us. My father wound up as a company policeman for Swift and Company during World War II. They had special police forces because that was a very important part of the war effort, to have a large packing plant. And then at that time here, there were several packing plants, and enough said. I don't think it, throwing advice around, I tried to get the kids to remember who they are and what they are, and they were for the most part religious. Certainly not to or the way I would be, but none of them did anything terrible, you know, and they one of them was a RN nurse. Another one was a businessman that was reasonably successful in California. But again, there's nothing spectacular, either for the good or for the bad, you know. I have always loved my children, and I tried to work with them when I could. I guess that really I have lived a pretty uneventful life. I mean, I was in France for better part of a year, and I traveled a great deal. I have some German relatives that my relatives had kept them alive after World War II. So I was very welcome. And I thought a lot of them, and of course, they had terrible times. I had a Oma, which is German for short for grandma. Well, we called her Oma. She and Opa, her husband, had been through World War I, and they said that he came back a different person than when he left. And then they had 3 boys and a girl and 1 grandchild. And the 2 oldest boys, one of them went to Russia, and that was the worst possible thing anybody could ever do in Germany. Would be they'd do anything to stay away from going to Russia to fight. And one of them was killed, and then the second one disappeared. And they didn't know then, and still wouldn't know if they were all alive, what happened to him. He just disappeared, and they couldn't find out. Then the third son was ironic. In the third son was in Germany, in the States in those days. If you had brothers and sisters, and any of them were killed, then they would take your name off the list, and you would not have to fight, go fight battles. And the third son, he got a supposedly cushy job, safe job. It was anti-aircraft weapons. Shooting at the bombers as they fly over and dropping bombs on them. That was a safe job. See, and then I shake my head. Then they ran out of the Americans, the Allies, ran out of targets. Oh, at that time, if you traveled through Germany, whole cities just gone, you know. And he was, I don't know what I was talking about. What was I saying?
You were mentioning World War II, one of the brothers was anti-aircraft, and that was because of...
Oh, yeah, okay, that's, yeah, oh, okay. All right, they didn't have anything to shoot at, so then they had what they called 88s. It was the best weapon, cannon, that artillery piece of anywhere at that time. And so when they couldn't shoot any airplanes because they quit bombing, then they took those guns and turned them into anti-tank weapons, which they, pardon me, were very good at. Pardon me. And yeah, they, and so he was now in the weapons business, shooting at tanks and stuff instead of airplanes. Yeah. And then, of course, finally, he was captured by the Americans, and the city that they lived in, Eilendorf, was a suburb of Aachen, and it wasn't far from the border, and it was a lot of fighting going on, and then he was finally captured by the Americans, as I already said, and then they turned him over to the French. And of course, France had been through hell, if you know anything about your World War II history, and there was fantastic amount of hatred, and they didn't treat the German prisoners well, and he was an officer, not a high officer, but he was an officer. But anyway, and so they put him all this dirty work, so to speak, and so he decided he was going to get away. And so he, one night when they called him all in from the field where they were working, why, he slipped into a pile of wood. And of course, in those days, wood was valuable because you could keep yourself warm and fed and so forth. Anyway, why, he hid in this pile of wood till it got dark, and then he squirreled out of it and tried to get back to Germany, or get away from the French, I should say. And yeah, and then they had a daughter, and the daughter, I never did know her. She had a child, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. And I don't know what about the father, I don't know. But the Americans and the Germans traded Aachen back and forth. And the little boy, his mother, and you got to understand what Judaism was and was not at that time. And the only thing I heard from them, and it didn't ask too many questions, but the only thing I heard from them was that she had an affiliation with a Jew. Now, what does that mean? I don't know, and I didn't ask. But the point was that they threw him in the concentration camp. And yeah, they threw him in the concentration camp, and the little boy was now an orphan, except for the fact that he had an ancient, I already described him as a beat-up grandpa, And Grandma was a typical German grandma, about this wide, you know, and so human, as she was a beautiful person, and she was left with the little boy, and the little boy got sick, but I already described Aachen as changing hands back and forth, and there were no medicines left, and he was very sick. So she took him, and there was no transportation, so she walked him. They walked together to another town. I don't know what the town was, I didn't ask. But she walked him to another town, and she described how it went over through fields and woods, you know, and as you can imagine, a German grandma would be telling about her only grandson, and she had to leave him there in that hospital and return to her home. That was the only thing to do. And so she did that, and she had to leave him there and come home, which she did, and he just disappeared. They had no idea, and this was in 1950-51. The war had been over, you know, but they had no idea what happened to the little boy. So I've described 3 sons, a daughter, and being captured by the French and escaping. And in those days, cities were flattened, and they also there was so much desolation, you know, and all. Yeah. So enough about that story. Is and has been living in Europe for 40 years, give or take. He was like me. He was a history bug, and I was too. By history, I mean about all the different things that have gone on and so forth. And he, in those days, when he was young, they had student exchanges. And one of them that was accessible, and he was the oldest of 6 kids, and he was a fantastic person on politics and history and so forth. And we exchanged a Mexican girl for him. She came from a wealthy Mexican family, and he went to Mexico for summer. And we thought, well, get it out of his system, you know. And the opposite happened. And he became very, very interested. And he could get on the phone and talk to people, and he was really amazing in that regard. And we managed to get some contact, and I can't make, after all these years, I can't make a consistent explanation, but the point was that he got, well, we found out he wanted to go to Germany or France, and those were all full. And so they said, we can send you to Finland. You know where Finland is? You know what kind of language they speak? Well, we got him in a student exchange in the summer, and he got all enthused. Oh, and they put him in a home that was a medical doctor's home, and he had children, but the one that was important was the one that was Kurt's age, and they hit it off together, and he was just crazy about it. And to make a long story very short, he wound up going back to Finland, and then the language in Finland is unique. There's nothing, maybe Estonian would be somewhat familiar, but basically it was unique, and the Swedes, they are the Finns. The Finns, because part of Finland was of Swedish extraction, they wound up with Sweden as a second language. That's not to say they could all understand it or speak it, but it was a second language. And so I got involved. Well, what they did, they had a 5th-year program. The 5th-year program was that they would take somebody from the States that had graduated from 4 years, and they would put him in a high school class in Finland with and so he came to Finland after graduating from high school, and they put him in the 5th year of the Swedish system. And I could sit here and go on and on and on, but anyway, he in Finland, when they get through with high school, if they go into after graduate work, and so they don't have an undergraduate degree. All they have is a master's. So you go straight from high school, if you can hang on long enough, through a master's degree. So he had wound up teaching Finnish about English, about America, etc. And he stuck with it and kept at it, and he got a master's degree. A lot more to it, but that's enough.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, Roger.
Okay.